Okay, welcome to a chain attack tactical Q&A. This is a very special tactical Q&A. We're doing this for a listener who won a charity prize, James Sherlock from Australia. He won a charity prize at a tournament that got him a basically one-on-one session with me. So that's what this is. So you guys get to watch it a little bit, and we're going to talk a little bit about what his question was. And his question was
well, they do a lot to make their
how to build a list.
It's just
So he wanted to know specifically how to build a list for Jarl, but we're gonna make it a little more generic. We're gonna talk about list building, list pairs, and the sort of things we should be thinking about when building a list. So I've gone ahead and taken some troll models and thrown them out on the table here. These are the models that we're going to build the list from. This is obviously, may or may not be more or less than what you have available to you in your own faction, but these are some of the things that you may think about as you go about building a list.
okay. So after this,
So James is with us in the chat room. So James, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and ask them, and I'll try to pay attention a little bit to the chat room and answer them as we go. So first couple of questions you need to ask yourself when building a list is, what do I want this list to accomplish? And so you're going to almost write a mission statement for that list, and then as you build it, you're going to ask, does this help that mission statement or does this hurt that mission statement? And you're going to move through, and we're going to add or remove models until we accomplish our goal. So before we even do that, let's look at the caster himself, and we're going to talk about what he does, because before we can write a mission statement about what he does, we need to know what he does. So this is Jarl. He's sitting out here in the middle here. He has two pistols. They're range 12. They're POW 12. He has evasive, so he can't be targeted by free strikes, and he can advance up to 2 inches after missed by a ranged attack. He has Swift Hunter, so when he kills a model with a ranged attack, he can move 2 inches. He has Black Penny, so he can fire into melee. The most important part, though, of almost any caster is going to be their spell card and their feat card. So, spell card, Magic Bullet. If target-friendly faction model makes an ranged attack if it hits, you can choose another model within 4 inches to take about 12. Quicken. This is an important spell, and I'm going to say why here in a little bit. But we'll go through all these spells, and I'll talk about why this one's one of the more important spells on his sheet. Quicken. Target-friendly model unit gains +2 speed and +2 defense against ranged attacks and magic attack rolls. Tactical Supremacy. Target-friendly model unit can advance up to 3 inches after all models have ended their activation on your turn. The last one, Wield Secrets. Target-friendly model unit gains Camouflage and Pathfinder. Okay. Let's talk about his feat real quick. So his feat is roll D3, take +3 of that, 4-inch AoE clouds, and place them anywhere completely within his control area. There's some things that they do, but the thing that we need to focus on the most is that they block line of sight, because they're clouds. So we're going to have a whole bunch. I actually don't think I have. I have 3. That's not enough, but we'll use those sort of as an example as we go. Okay, so we've learned a couple of things here. First thing we learned is that Jarl can block line of sight for 1 turn. That can be very effective at making sure that you deliver the first strike and that you keep models from being able to retaliate. So the next thing we learned is that he can pick out solos. So Magic Bullet. We also learned he can provide a lot of speed and a lot of defense against range and magic attacks. He also additionally supplies speed out of Tactical Supremacy, although it happens out of activation. So Tactical Supremacy is one of those spells that can be used either as a retreat to help a model get back out of the fight, or as a help get the models to the fight quicker. So the next one, Wield Secrets, provides Pathfinder. So it's an important little thing that I mean, the rest of it is not quite as important. It does some things, but Pathfinder's kind of the big part of that. So we got 2 fairly important spells here, the biggest one being Quicken. So let's talk about what Quicken does for us. Quicken makes trolls, which is not really a slow faction. I mean, a lot of people think of trolls and think they're slow. They can be, but they can also be extremely quick. You'll notice some of the models I put out here on the table, including the Long Riders and the Fen Blades, can be extremely fast. And you add Quicken to that mix, and they're ridiculously fast. Another model here, the Earthborn, with an Axer and Quicken. If he's sitting near some rough terrain, he can fly across the board. So, Jarl specifically can be one of the faster casters in trolls. Get the hell out of the way.
So he's actually 23, so it's
So, we're going to talk a little bit about where to go from here. So, what we want to do is find a faction where blocking line of sight, where speed, and targeted factions where blocking line of sight, speed, and taking out key important solos is a good way to deal with them. So we think about our factions. That means that Crix, Khador, even maybe Menoth. These are some factions that we can use to make Jarl strong. So now we need to think about, okay, who doesn't that make him strong against? So he has no damage buff. We can give it to him through, say, a Pyre Troll, or I don't have one out here, but they're a Mauler. We can give him a damage buff. That's a single model damage buff. Makes it a little hard to break through heavy armor, so we don't necessarily want to put Jarl up against another troll list. We don't necessarily want to put Jarl up against a, say, a Scorn list, or we might have difficulty even with a Storm Wall. So if we're going to try to target him for Crix, Khador, Menoth, Circle even. So let's try to build a mission statement around that. So those factions, a lot of them can have a lot of troops, a lot of high defense models, models that don't necessarily have high armor. Menoth is a little bit of a outlier from that, but I think you can still kind of gear this list to deal with that fairly well. Okay, so any list build, we start with our caster, and we're going to, in Horde specifically, and we'll come back around to this a little bit, but basically in Hordes it's going to be a completely different list building structure than what you're going to do in War Machine, because in War Machine you're probably going to start with troops, and then you're going to throw in whatever Jack fits at the end. Here we've kind of got to build some troop, or beast choices first, because he needs Fury to survive. So we got multiple beasts out here. We have a range extender with the Impaler. He's got Far Strike on him. He's a ranged beast. He doesn't hit very hard, but he can help Jarl reach out and touch people. So it's a very strong beast to take with Jarl. Some other beasts that we have here, the Blitzer, the Bomber, both ranged beasts. The Pyre Troll is a ranged beast, but he doesn't really do much for the ranged game. He's really more of a damage buff. So we might come back to him a little bit later. Now we talk about the melee package. So if you want to take a melee package with Jarl, the Earthborn and the Axer are two great beasts that you could put together as a group. If we want to go beast heavy, we could even go Axer, Earthborn, Bomber, Impaler, and then we have all of it. But then you run into the issue of this model's a 3 Fury Beast, this model's a 4 Fury Beast, excuse me, 5 Fury Beast, 3 Fury Beast. Together here we've got 9, 15 Fury. You can pull off 6. That might be a little excessive. So normally you're probably going to try to put together a beast package where you might double his total Fury. I don't really have a good rule of thumb. It sort of depends on the faction. I've played Scorn lists where I could put out, 5 to 6 times as much Fury as my caster had on the table, and have before. Trolls particularly doesn't have a great way to deal with excess Fury, so we're probably going to want to back off a little bit. So for now, we're going to leave all these guys off, except for these two. So these two are kind of helping our particular targeted opponent, our mission statement, the Crix, Khador, Menoth, Circle. So These guys are going to help us with that. We got AoEs to deal with high defense, AoEs to deal with mass troops, range extender to help both of these models. Additionally, a model that can sort of crowd control single heavy sometimes. So not always, but it's something we can do. It's a trick we have in our toolbox. So Jarl has 6 beast points. We've added 5 10, so we're at 9 total points here, because 5, 10, minus 6, at 9 total points. So now let's talk about some of these other options we have on the table. I've sort of split these two groups up a little bit. We've got, over here we've got Fenblades and Long Riders. Over here we've got Warders. We've got the Krellstone here, which is a support unit, and over here we have Braylon and the for some reason I just spaced what their names were. Let's try this again. We'll look them up real quick. Highwayman. Couldn't think of them. So we have Highwayman, Braylon, and we've got some solos over here as well. So let's talk about what units we want to take, and then we'll talk about support after we're done with the units. So again, he has some great spells. Magic Bullet is great on any ranged model. He can cast it on himself or on other models, so he can cast it on both the Impaler and the Bomber. He can also cast it on Braylon and any of the Highwaymen, though he probably wouldn't. He'd probably cast it here or here. Higher rat stuff that's guaranteed to hit, or not necessarily guaranteed, but has a really good chance of hitting. Quicken works great on models that are normally slow, but need to get up there faster, or fast models if you want to guarantee that you get the Alpha Strike and you want to set the line of battle deep across the table. Quicken also works well with ranged units, especially units that want to get into your back arc, so Highwaymen. So Quicken's a great spell for all of these units. We just need to decide what we want to do. So stacking armor, probably not a good idea versus Crix. If we were trying to build this list for something different, let's say we wanted to build this to take down a storm wall, you could probably pretty easily do that by using Jarl, some clouds, and some really fast warders. Even the fast cav are a great way to do that. But instead, we're going to probably target something that can handle a lot more troops. So we're gonna set these guys aside just for a second. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Fenblades. So Fenblades, speed 6, a mini feat that gives them plus 2 inches on a charge. So base speed 6, Quicken would make them 8. Mini feat would give them charge plus 5. So they would charge 13 inches and they have reach, so they threaten 15. So really good unit to guarantee the first strike. They will outpace these clouds, unfortunately, most of the time, but you can, in many situations, feat early to guarantee that they're behind the cloud. So I've always liked Fenblades with Jarl, but there's other things you can do as well. So we've kind of decided that the Warders are not necessarily the best choice for this particular list, because it doesn't necessarily meet the targeted types of opponents that we're looking for. So we've got sort of, our list is starting to shape itself here a little bit. We've got a nice fast unit that likes having a Quicken on it. We have a unit that likes having Tactical Supremacy on it. So let's talk about that for a minute. Tactical Supremacy, after all models have moved and their activations are over, you get to move 1 unit 3 inches. So it basically gives these guys pseudo reform. So after they take all their gunshots, they can back up 3 inches. That's a great thing for a ranged unit, something that can move up, shoot, kill a bunch of models, and then move back out of the models' range that are left over. Additionally, we didn't talk about it, but these cav love to come crashing in from the side. So let's pretend that I deployed these guys over here. Let's grab a quick measuring tape. Say I went second. These calves start here at 10 inches off the table. They are speed 7, so they can run 14. They just got to come over here off to the side. Especially if you cast it on first turn, then you can move them another 3 inches. They're kind of going off camera here, I apologize, but you can see how far they get on the first turn. So then your opponent moves up, they're way off to the side, they can come crashing in. So these guys are speed 7, they got reach, so they threaten to here. okay? And you're just going to want to hit the outside edge of their force, and it's almost like a mini. I mean, they're not light cav, but it gives them sort of a mini light cav move at the end of the turn. So crash in, kill just the outside edge, back up 3 inches, keeping the main part of their force away from them, and getting a lot of value out of cavalry models. And as I've mentioned on previous tactical Q&As, getting value out of your cavalry models is a very important thing. So, and I've mentioned that same tactic previously. Tactical supremacy makes it even better. Someday the trolls will get a light cav unit, and it'll be amazing. Okay, so I've talked about the list we've got here. We've got, or the models we've got here, we've got a ranged unit. We're probably going to take a ranged solo that's going to help buff them. Tactical supremacy is going to be great on them. Quicken's going to be great here. We got a lot of damage that we can do at range to take out mass troops. We've got a good way to guarantee that we get the first strike. So let's talk about support stuff. Okay, so this particular unit, the Krell Stone. Okay, the Krell Stone provides +2 armor with the stone, and then we've got the Stone Scribe Elder, which gives us some additional stuff. So Jarl's normally Fury strapped, and if you're building this for the first time, you haven't played with Jarl, you may not really realize how difficult it is for him to supply the stone. But you know, after you play it a few times, you'll realize, hey, this is really hard for me to keep putting Fury into him. But let's talk about our targeted group. So we're talking about Khador. Do we need the stone for Khador? There's nothing out here that Khador can't kill at +2 armor. Okay. Crix is the same way. Okay. Menoth, same way. None of this stuff needs the stone. Okay. We're building a list that doesn't really need the stone. Why would we need the stone? So there is a great reason why we'd need the stone, and it works against Crix specifically. It's a little bit of a frustrating thing for most troll players, I think. The problem is that the stone does something that we don't have very many other places. It has Spirit Chaser, which removes incorporeal and stealth. So we have Magic Bullet to sort of help us deal with stealth, but we don't really have, and the bomber can sort of hope that he hits stuff with stealth. But incorporeal is kind of a problem. There's really not very many magical items and magical weapons in here. Jarl's guns are magical. Fenblades don't have magic. I don't have Braylon's card here, but I don't think her guns are magical either. So we really, if we run into something that's incorporeal, yeah, her guns are not magical. We're in trouble. Okay, we got no way to deal magical damage except for with our caster. And if we run into something that's got a lot of incorporeal, we're in big trouble. So, do we want to take this? Maybe. And maybe so that we can use those benefits. +2 armor on your caster never hurts. +2 armor on these beasts never hurts. It's not really necessary on the rest of this stuff. But the Spirit Chaser part of it, the +1 to damage part of it, that the Stone Scribe Elder can do, are a big deal. So, Stone Scribe Elder is almost guaranteed we're going to need to take him if we take the stone. Okay, so James asked me a question. He asked if I would consider taking a bouncer. I absolutely would, and there's 2 reasons why I would. Number one, I might need a little bit more Fury. I'm not sure that this is enough for Jarl, especially if I lose a beast early. He was specifically talking about having a shield guard. I don't necessarily think you need the shield guard part of it. In fact, I think that this is probably a cheaper and better choice if that's what you're worried about, is Jarl taking damage. So Jarl's defensive stats are 15-15. These make him 15-17. If you are really worried and you don't have Genis in your other list, you can put a wall in front of him repeatedly, making him a 19-15 or a 19-17. He can make him very defensible. In my experience with Jarl, you really don't have an issue keeping him alive. He has Wield Secrets, which can give a model stealth. He can put it on him, or sorry, not stealth, camouflage. He can put it on himself and stand in a forest and essentially be defense 19 against ranged magic. You can still, yeah. He can also put Quicken on himself, protecting him from range and magic. He's got a lot of defensive tech that you kind of don't necessarily think about. So the only reason I would consider taking a bouncer is more of a Fury Battery, and I think they're better choices. The Pirate Troll is probably a better choice. I need targeted damage buff, and I also need transfer targets. If you feel like you're strapped all the time, like you're always spending more of his Fury than he's got, and you really do think you need a shield guard, the bouncer kind of can fit in there. I'll be honest, in Mark II, I've never once taken a bouncer. Trollcasters don't need it. There's just too many other defensive tech like the Krellstone, like Janissa putting out walls. Trollcasters just naturally have good stats. The bouncer just kind of fits in a situation where
That's definitely an 8.
he's struggling to fit in. So maybe, but I think there's better choices. Axer's alone, if you need just a single melee presence, Axer's a great choice. He does, again, he fits our targeted role. We want to kill a lot of troops. Nice Mat 6 beast with Thresher does a great job at killing all kinds of stuff. So, okay, so talked a little bit about them. We mentioned that he's pretty much the key model in this list if we're going to take him, so guaranteed we're going to take that if we take them. Okay, I've brought 3 other solos out here. The first one's a Fellcaller. So Fellcaller provides us with a map buff. You'll notice that one thing that Jarl does not have is a map buff, and you'll also notice that one of the things that we were targeting is Khador. Crix, there's particular models in Crix and a bunch of models in Khador that can have very high defensive stats. You got a Mat 6 unit that's going to have difficulty against some of those units like the Styxis Raiders. So I feel like that we probably ought to be taking a map buff. So he helps us some other places. He's kind of a utility piece. It's very rare that when I played Trolls that I left the Fellcaller at home. And I think specifically here he's a great option because he shores up one of Jarl's weaknesses against some of the factions that we're targeting. So we're going to throw him in here because he's a great addition to these guys. Okay, so the 2 other models we have here, we have the Chronicler, okay, and we have the Stone Scribe Elder. Sorry, not the Stone Scribe Elder, the hell, I can't think of what he's called. It's right here, card's right in front of me. Rune Bearer. Okay, so we have the Rune Bearer and the Stone Scribe Chronicler. Okay, let's talk a little bit about what they do. Now, you can do this with any list that you're going to build. As you go through, you're going to say, does he add to what I've already got, and is he too much? So this is a good question for these. Am I going to end up with too much support when I'm done? So these models are all support models, Trolls specifically, but it happens in other factions. Scorn, Menoth specifically can have some major issues with this of support bloat. So he's kind of a cool model because he's got a spray and he can do some other things. He does have some added benefit, but these guys really don't add a lot to combat other than the problems that they solve. He adds 0 to combat except for the problems he solves. So you have to be careful not to get too far into support. And that can happen in any faction. Okay, so Rune Bearer. What does the Rune Bearer do? He has Harmonious Exaltation, and once per game he can cast a spell. So these are both of those things are amazingly good for Jarl. So one thing that Jarl likes to do is he likes to cast Magic Bullet every turn. So reducing the cost of Magic Bullet or reducing the cost of Farce Strike are both great. So every turn he's going to benefit from 1 extra Fury from the Rune Bearer. Okay. Additionally, let's pretend that obviously we're not even close to 50 points here, so we're going to probably bring in something else that we've got over here, most likely the Cav. We'll see how many points we've got, but we've got Jarl. Wants to be able to move Quicken around. Quicken's this speed buff that I mean, it's got this defensive aspect, but that's not as big a deal as the +2 speed. So what can we do to move it around? Well, the once per game ability. Like there's going to be a turn where you're like, okay, I upkeep it on the Fen Blades. They charge in. I want to cast it on to these guys, but I need my caster to go the other direction or whatever. He can cast it, or he can cast it on. Jarl can cast it on the cavalry, and the Rune Bearer can put it on to Jarl, giving him some defense bonuses. Really, the once per game ability of the Rune Bearer can be a big deal. He can even use it to cast Magic Bullet. So there's lots of value in taking the Rune Bearer. I feel like the Rune Bearer is almost guaranteed to be going with Jarl. So the Chronicler. Let's talk about the Chronicler a little bit. The Chronicler provides us 3 things. Okay, Charge of the Trolls. An affected model gains +2 to melee attack and melee damage rolls against enemy models in the range of a friendly faction war beast. Well, we've got 2 war beasts, so it's a little hard to apply that buff. Only one of them has reach, which makes it very difficult, especially because it's a beast that we don't really want to risk. Far Strike is a pretty important animus. So that bonus is not till good unless we get another model in here like that Axer. So next bonus, Hero's Tragedy. If you lose a model, those models get knocked down. Does that help here? It can. It's not so good against some of the factions that we're targeting against. I mean, they're going to get knocked down, but do we really care? I mean, is it really going to change the fight? You know, if we're going to knock models down with that, we want it to be high value models. There's not a whole lot that we're going to be facing that have super high value models, warrior models. The last one, Tail of Mist. Affected models gain concealment and feign death. A model with feigned death cannot be targeted by ranged or magic attacks. So Tail of the Mist helps us get across the table. And additionally, Tail of the Mist and affected models gain concealment and feigned death. Kind of combos with Willed Secrets. Target friendly model unit gains camouflage and pathfinder. Camouflage specifically says a model with camouflage gains an additional +2 defense when benefiting from concealment or cover. So now we've got an ability that gives out concealment on the unit that we really want it to be on, and a spell that gives them +2 defense, making those guys absolutely amazing. So probably want to keep him too. Do we have too much support? Maybe, but I specifically targeted these models because I wanted them sort of be in this list. You look at other models and say, okay, he doesn't really do anything for the targeted people I want to take him against. They don't really help.
He's only
So one of the people watching mentioned that Dooney and Knot would be, seems like they'd be useful in this list. Certainly, there's a lot of models. I'm pretending that these are the only models I have available to me, but certainly there are other models, ones that are not here. Burwers are a good example, that are going to be amazing with Jarl. You can build a list around them. So Dooney and Knot is a great example of a support unit that you can throw in this list. So I'm going to keep the Krellstone in here because I feel like it's sort of important against some of those targeted matchups that we've talked about, specifically Crix. And I'm going to go really quickly here.
It wouldn't have changed.
And I'm going to add a bunch of these models into this War Room list. I always build with War Room or Forward Commander. If you've ever been to forwardcommander.com, that's with a K. I build with Forward Commander all the time, but I also build with War Room. I always build with something like that because it helps with mathematic mistakes, although War Room in the past has had some problems with that. But it can be frustrating to finish building a list and have to count the list 6 times trying to figure out if you got enough points or not. So skip that part, even if you're really good at math. I don't have an issue with math, but I don't like having to do it multiple times. I like being right the first time on that stuff. So add in a min unit of Krellstone. We'll talk about maybe if we're going to go to a full unit later.
13, 6, 7.
Okay, so we've got a full unit of Highwaymen.
They are
and
because
Fenblades.
Yep. So he gets
and Fenblade UA. Okay. So currently we're at 47 of our 56 points. With this stuff that's on the table, sorry, we do not have max unit, we've got min there. So we got 9 points left. We might be a little strapped for Fury at some point. So commonly this guy is going to cast Far Strike, so he's going to have 2 there. This guy's going to probably boost either 2 attack or 2 damage rolls or something. He might have 2 Fury, he could end up having more. So there's actually enough here that we're probably okay, but we don't want to lose one. So options are add another beast, add another unit. We could potentially even take out a solo and bring in the cavalry. I mean, 2 point solo makes the cavalry come in pretty strong, and I kind of like that quite a bit. Let's see. Problem is I don't really. This is actually probably the 2 points I would take out. So that's actually more than 2 points. But so take that out. Add in Cav, which I think are a great unit against a lot of the factions we're talking about, especially if you play them kind of cagey. And then we probably. Oh, I'm brilliant. We'd probably throw in Swamp Gobbers because I think we're 1 point short at this point. Anyway, so this is sort of the process we're going to go through every time we build a list. So we're going to decide, what am I trying to defeat? And what are the models available to me that do the best job at doing that? Which models synergize with his spells on his sheet and the feat that he has, and they synergize together. Some of this is going to take some trial and error. You're going to have to work through, you're going to have to figure out what are the best models to use. But you can probably figure it out after a few games whether or not it works together or not. So one of the things that I always do, build a list, I play it out in my head like I just did here, and I put it on the table, play it a couple of times. Don't make changes after the first play, don't make changes after the second play. After the third play, preferably against 3 different opponents, you're going to go through and say, okay, which of these models that I have on my list don't do what I thought they were supposed to do? Take it out, replace it with something that does do what you wanted it to do. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about pairings. So we talked about this really quickly. We talked about a targeted pairing, or targeting what we want him to go against and building a list that comes in against that particular target. Now we need to come up with a caster and models that go well against the models that he does not play well against. So let's just go through those really quick again. He doesn't do well against the Stormwall. Probably doesn't do well against a lot of mass ranged attacks. I mean, this is a ranged army, but it doesn't outrange most of the ranged armies out there. So, you know, a good Kane 2 list is probably going to just blow this all up. So Signar seems to be an issue for us. Menoth, in some situations, if they have enough range attacks, Harbinger, for example, even without range attacks, could be a pretty big issue for this particular list. One of the things this list can do against Harbinger is run up early quick and get far forward with the abilities on the card, quicken, fast models, and then when she feats, counter feat and block line of sight to your stuff and just kind of wait it out. Okay, so don't necessarily have the best against Menoth, but we're good against Crix, we're good against Khador. We might struggle a little bit against Rhett. But we're fast and we've got some defense bonuses against range attacks. Some of them they can ignore, some of them they cannot. So maybe not. We probably need to play that one and try it a little bit. Mercs potentially has a Colossal in it, so this is probably not the list that we want to take against Mercs. This can do well against... this may be pretty good against Circle. Circle does not like being outranged. They also don't like particular souls in the background getting hit. This list can hit pretty hard and fairly well from a long ways out, especially with the cavalry models. So I think it's good against Circle. I think it's okay. It's not good against Legion. It probably can't hit hard enough or fast enough. It might be okay against some Legion lists, but against, say, things like Lilith 2, she'll probably just shoot all this stuff down. We have a worthless feat against Legion, so maybe not necessarily the one we want to target. Scorn, you probably don't have enough damage output against a lot of Scorn lists. It sort of depends on the Scorn list. So mirror match, this is definitely not the list you want to take against Trolls, especially if they have high armor. If you ended up with a sort of a similar list, this is actually going to play fairly well against itself. So there is that. So we need to build a list that's going to cover those matchups. Now, right off the top of my head, I would tell you to, excuse me, sorry for hitting the mic. I would tell you that Runes of War is probably an amazing list to put with this. So the one we talked about, Sigmar, Legion, even Circle, and the bad matchups in Circle, because you don't want to take this against Bradigus. Scorn, Runes of War is amazing against those. So there's a good, right off the bat, standard list that a lot of people are playing. It's already built for itself, so you don't have to go through this whole process again. That's a good list. Runes of War also does well against some of the other targeted matchups that we could not cover, like Menoth. So, you know, you just have to figure out what you want to play. You know, you can build a Borka list, or you can build a Madrak 2 list that handles the things that this doesn't handle. You just have to go through that same process, and then you have to test it. You know, obviously I said I wasn't sure how well this is going to do against Rhett. I'm not sure how well it's going to do against some of the other stuff. Obviously you're going to have to, when you come up against Circle, if they've got Bradigus, this isn't going to work. So it's a little bit of trial and error. But these are the processes that are going through my head as I build lists, and that as you build lists, you're going to try to figure out. So I recommend sort of, I did it with models here, but you can do it with cards. You know, take all your cards take the models out that you think might be good and put them in stacks. Fast units, armor stacking units, hard-hitting units, whatever you think you need for the particular list, your targeted thing, kind of separate them out and say, okay, I need another unit here, and then just go through the stack and look at the different units you have available to you and say, okay, this is the unit I think is going to do it.
Yeah.
Boom, put them out there. Okay, and then just start putting cards together, and then put the list together and say, okay, how many points am I over? A lot of times I think newer players are probably have, you know, bigger eyes than they have stomachs, and they're just going to like try to grab everything and say, this is going to be an amazing list, and they start putting it together, realize they're 15 points over, and they have to start cutting stuff out. So, you know, start simple, say these are the things I really, really want, and this is what I'm going to throw in. I think this is actually a really good Jarl list, and I'd be totally willing to play it. I think that it's, you know, I would love to see it on the table. So, it's not the only Jarl list. You know, you could take Jarl and make an armor cracking list with him just as support and magic bullet only as I'm going to pick out key solos to help me win the fight. Take out the bomber, take out the impaler, bring in the axer, earthborn, maybe even Molg, Mauler, bring in warders. You might even leave the cav, absolutely bring in the Krellstone, and then put out a line of clouds and say, okay, well, my list is kind of slow and high armor, and you're not going to get the first strike. I will. That's where the original Meat Mountain came from. So you can totally do that with Jarl. So anyway, let's talk a little bit. Now when I built this list, I'm gonna take this stuff across, and we're gonna talk about the very first time you play with a new list, how you figure out how to do deployment, how you're gonna unpack, when to feat. So let's go ahead and play this list. Just we're gonna deploy here on the table. I'm gonna actually deploy a little closer to the center than what you normally would, just because I want you to be able to see it a little bit better. So normally deployment would be way back here, but I'm gonna instead go 10 inches in, and then we're gonna deploy at 17 total. So pretend that this is the edge of the table. Okay, so I'm just going to throw out a few dice to mark where my deployment zone is, so I don't have to keep measuring, and we're going to go ahead and throw these models out. So first thing we talked about was these cav models are going to deploy way off to the side. Okay, they need to be in range so I can get tactical supremacy on them if I want them, or quicken, but I'm going to deploy them way out to the side. They're the fastest of the units I've got available to me. They can easily reposition if I deploy them incorrectly. My opponent puts something across from them that I don't want. Okay, second unit I'm going to deploy is these highwaymen. They're pretty quick. They're a ranged unit. They really don't like having multiple threats coming in at them, so we're going to put them off to the left. Braylon probably wants to be near them. She gives them some added benefits, so we're going to also put her here. And we don't want, one of the problems that I think new troll players have is they're used to small base units, and they want to line them up like they used to line up small base units, which is like this. That's not really an option in trolls. You'll spread your force out so far that people aren't controlled, aren't under feats, aren't under control areas. You really need to learn to do, double rows with trolls. It's just something you start doing after a while. So Jarl's always going to be central, almost always. I mean, unless there's something on the table that changes that terrain scenario. This guy here, we've specifically taken him in the list to buff the highwaymen, so we're going to put him behind there. The bomber and impaler are sort of a ranged threat. They don't need to get there quickly. In fact, the quicker they get there, the more trouble they might get into. So we're going to put them back behind where our unit of fen blades is going to be. This guy here, the fell collar, is mostly in the list for the fen blades, but if we're talking seriously high defense stuff, we want cavalry charges +2 mat to hit, say, Chaosi, for example, even with +2 mat, and these guys get to mat 11 with this. That's really, you still need 8s against Chaosi, so not the best, but it's sort of an answer. It gives you an opportunity to try to hit them. And these guys are really our jam unit. They're the fastest, they're melee hungry, they want to get across the table. These guys are going to be central, okay? So they got a really long command range, so we're going to make sure we put that guy in the center, our leader, UA, with the drummer next to it. One of the things that I see a lot of newer players do wrong is they forget about the normal unit commander, and when he dies, their normal unit commander is out of position. So we're going to make sure that our normal unit commander, which is, where did he go?
It's POW.
I'm not seeing the normal unit commander. Well, you get the idea. We'll use this guy and say he's the unit commander. He's not, but we're going to place him centrally. Okay, so if the officer dies, we now have our normal unit commander centrally, so that they're not out of formation. They can still be buffed, and we'll still have the opportunity to put things on them. So I need to back up the bomber here a little bit. Okay, and our last model is the Rune Bearer, whose only importance is to be within 5 inches of Jarl. So he's going to be right here in the back. So deployment. Okay, first turn. Jarl's going to activate. He's going to put Quicken on the Fen Blades. He's going to put Tactical Supremacy on the Highwayman. One of the things you probably should do is make sure that I did do it, but it was more out of luck than out of planning it. So Braylon's going to run, to here. My caster's going to move up. He's going to cast here, and then he's going to kind of move over here, and he's going to cast here. Tactical Supremacy, Quicken. So now these guys, we probably actually, sorry, I wanted him to get probably farther than that. So that's 3. I sort of screwed up. Might need to cast it before you go if you lined up correctly, but either way, he's going to move fairly far forward because these guys are going to take off. Quicken here, these guys run 14 inches. 16 inches, they're speed 8. Okay. And we're going to spread them out because they got reach. They can threaten a lot of area. Keep this guy in the back. They got massive command with him because of the drummer. These guys are just going to swarm out here, and they're going to cover most of the table, and they're going to be a +2 defense against ranged and attack. And then these guys are going to go. They're going to run, and these guys you may have to be careful that they don't accidentally outpace the rest of your force, because they got Tactical Supremacy, which you're going to want to take advantage of, but you may not want to do this first turn. And then you're going to leave the last one trailing back. Give them a nice out. These guys all have low armor. You don't want them too tight because the AoEs are going to rip them apart. And this guy's going to move up. He's going to give them Feign Death, or whatever it's called. The one that gives them Feign Death. Can't think of the name of it. Tail of Miss. Anyway, so now we've got a nice even. These guys are going to run. They got 14, so they can get pretty far up there. We've covered most of the board. We're threatening so far that most people are not really going to have a way to outflank us. That's what this army does really well. I'm going to put that there. Okay. So if they come in on us and we're having issues, Jarl can move up to here and he can just feet across to here and say, okay, the only thing you're going to have even line of sight on is these two things out on the side. They're probably going to be out of range of you. Bomber's going to move up. He's going to run probably. Rile and run, move up. He's just going to stay back here. You don't have to have him very far forward because he's very key to the list. You don't want to lose him. There's a couple of models like that. This one's also the same way. You can keep him farther back. Just keep in mind that he can move 6 and still buff a unit that's within 9 of him. So technically, he could have came from, let's say this is off. Technically, this is off the table. But I mean, I'm just guesstimating right there. So he could move 6. I'm pretty sure the range on his thing is 9. I'll pull the card up real quick here and make sure I'm not lying to you. Range 9. That's 9. So I actually could have stayed another ½ inch back. So a lot of times I see people take these support solos and just put them too far forward and then they lose them. And, obviously you want him to be part of the fight, but you don't have to have him that far up. I mean, this is easily within range of being able to apply his fell call to either of these units. I remember that correctly, right? No, Warcry's range 5. I lied to you guys. Anyway, my point is that he could have started here. So speed 6 moves to there, range 5. Thought it was command range. It might have been a Mark 1. Either way, don't get him too far forward. Okay, so this is how you're going to unpack. Okay. You might have some defensive terrain that you're going to put Jarl behind, some defensive terrain that these guys want to be behind. You could even put defensive terrain on these guys because it's easy for Jarl to move over to here and move Willed Secrets over to these guys and give them Pathfinder if they need it to get over this stuff. You also have a source of Pathfinder here. Don't be worried about using terrain. So the only model that I think I probably put too far out is probably her. Okay, so that's turn 1. Okay, your opponent does whatever they're going to do. Keep in mind that I added 10 inches, so you're back here a little bit farther, but you're almost to the halfway line. Let's see, these guys are speed. I mean, you are at the halfway line. This front row is at the halfway line. They're a little bit farther back. They're a little bit farther back, but you can definitely threaten most of the table. Keep in mind that this stuff doesn't slow down turn 2. You can still charge in, and these guys are going to be devastating with a mini feat and quicken on them. They're going to be able to charge deep into your opponent's line. Like, he basically can't come out of his deployment zone without getting hit. If things don't work out and they're coming in on you, and there's something going on that, like Harvey's feat, for example, where you can't charge in, that's where you feat. I'll have more rings, but let's say you get 4 or 5 out here. 4 is the minimum, so then you can kind of consolidate. These guys that are fast can still stay out on the outsides, and now you're guaranteed they can't get the first strike, and you just wait till next turn and you do it again. So I think normally with Jarl, a feat turn 2 is probably the right play. Feat turn 3 is usually the fight's already there. You're really not going to get a whole lot of value. If we were playing more of a melee force, if we were playing those warders and that Earthborn, feat turn 3 might be more like it. And that's one of the things you have to learn as you play the list. Trying to figure out, okay, when is the best time to feat? And with Jarl, it depends heavily on what's in the list. In this list, turn 2. You definitely want to feat turn 2.
So he's POW 18 because my feat's done. He won't be POW.
James asks, it is likely Jarl's feat will be a counter feat, question mark, or is it one of those purely situational feats that has not prescribed use? That has been my biggest downfall with new warlocks, working out when their feat is best used. So Jarl specifically, as I mentioned earlier, it depends on the list. In this particular situation, I think that it's better defensively. I can actually see situations where I would pop it first turn. If I could get him far enough forward. That's part of the problem is he's a lot slower than the rest of his list. But in this particular list, in this type of list with Jarl, you're almost always going to pop it turn 2. So how are you going to figure that out with casters? It's going to depend heavily on the list. There's some casters who pop their feet always turn 2, or certain list builds they almost never pop their feet. Some casters that like to use their feet as an assassination vector. Sometimes like Krios. Krios is a good example. Krios, like his feet get stronger and stronger sometimes the later the game goes on, and it causes people to play defensively, and sometimes it's just better not to use it. So there's a lot of casters in the game like that where knowing when to pop the feet is part of what comes from experience, and I can't really give you a good example other than I'm going to tell you how to handle this particular list. I mentioned play it 3 times before you change something. Play it 20 times before you give up on it. Maybe more. Don't give up on a list until you've figured out why it's not working. If you figure out why it's not working early, sure, you can bail on a list. You don't need to keep banging your head against the wall. But if the list is mostly working but everything's not quite right, stick with the list and don't make major changes. Don't to make wide sweeping changes and play it again the next time and be like, well, this doesn't feel right either. Well, yeah, it's because you didn't refine, you just completely started over. You start back at square one. So don't start over at square one. Try to figure out how to add to a list and adjust to a list. Okay, so talk a little bit about why we put these things in here. Talked about when to use the feat. So let's talk a little bit about list chicken. or I shouldn't call it list chicken, but list selection.
I'm like, crud.
So we mentioned right at the beginning what we were targeting him for. Well, that makes list selection a little bit easier. You come against that Crix opponent, and you're like, okay, well, Jarl's my Crix list. At least initially, you may find that as you drop him into certain Crix lists, this list is not going to do well against Crix, or this list isn't going to do well against some of the other targeted factions that you tried to build it for.
Pretty much dead.
And some of the targeting you're going to do comes from experience. And if you don't have that experience, you're going to make some mistakes in that. But stick with your plan, okay? Don't try to outthink yourself. Play your list to what you had them targeted into, and then get experience. You're not going to go into every convention or every tournament or every league night and win every game, but you can go into every league night, every game, every tournament, and learn something. Okay, and come out. Maybe you keep a little note. You take a little notepad and you say, okay, play Jarl with list version 1.0 against P-Scar. 30 Bane Knights, LOL, lost, whatever it happens to be. So, and maybe you played it incorrectly into those matchups as well. So don't abandon a list because it didn't play well into a matchup. Just because, don't blame the list sometimes. So
that's 4 points. I think I might drop.
Coffin Nail VGD asks, what about change it 3 times before you play it?
But for 2 more points, I can take another.
I'm assuming you mean change the list at least 3 times before you play it in a tournament or something? I'm not exactly sure what you're asking, but no. There are times where you'll build a list the first time correctly and no changes are necessary. I know that probably doesn't happen to most people, but sometimes you catch lightning in a bottle and the list is right the first time, and you get playing it and you're like, man, this list is great. There's really no reason to change it. Even those lists, the meta will adjust, and a year down the road, you're like, okay, well, the meta's changed. The people I play against play different things because they're tired of playing against this list. I need to adjust my list. The Cav's got to come out, and something else got to come in. Those are the times you make changes, when things have changed or when it doesn't play as well as it used to. But if you don't need to change, you don't have to change.
My war beast. I mean, especially on the turn, Getter X, just wreck.
Okay, so another question is from Polaron asks, do you ever build lists around a specific win condition, assassination, scenario, or clock? How will this list win most games? It's a good question. So, I'm trying to approach this from a very first list building pair perspective. So I'm trying to talk to a player who's learning the game newly, and they want to build 2 list pairing that they're happy with, that they're enjoying playing. So I'm going to say that building a list for assassination, scenario, and clock, attrition, whatever, those things are a little bit more advanced topics and not necessarily what you need to start with. And I think some people worry a little bit too much about how they're going to win the game with a particular list. Does this list do well? Yes. What's this list's main win condition? I mean, if you think about it, we built it to kill a lot of models. Okay, we built this list to kill lots and lots of single wound infantry. So this list is already, that's his one win condition, is attrition. So I didn't have to worry about that. It just happened during a natural process of list creation. The second part of it is, can this list assassinate? It absolutely can. So Jarl, against lower armor stuff, especially the list that we're specifically talking about, Menoth, Crix, the guys that have lower armor in that, I mean, obviously, we talked about Crix, but if this came up against Terminus, I'd have a hard time beating Terminus with this list. But, there's exceptions to every rule. Can this list assassinate? Jarl himself can absolutely assassinate. Lower armor stuff, Bomber, Impaler, Jarl together provide a very good threat. These guys provide a very good threat. So, can it assassinate? Yes. Against higher armor targets? No. So this list is mostly going to try to win on scenario. You're going to need to set the line of battle way across the table, kill their front row, backup in some situations, take out their key solos, make it difficult for them to retaliate, put out a line of clouds to keep them from coming in. Anything they bring in, you're going to be able to kill, especially because, you know, like they're going to be able to get into this front row, but now you got a whole row of fen blades behind them and guys on the sides that are going to be able to come in. He's also got Black Penny to free up guys. So you can go for all three. And this list can win on scenario. This list can win on assassination. And that all came out of a very fluid list building process. Part of that is because I think Jarl's better than what most troll players give him credit for. There's a lot of casters in the game that are that way, where you can build a list just naturally. We'll be able to handle all three things. A good list is going to be able to handle two, and you may not figure out whether or not your list can handle those things until it's too late. But eventually you're going to say, okay, yes, this list can do X and Y. It may not be able to do X, Y, and Z. If you've done all that, you spent some time, you enjoy the list, but you got down to the very end and it only does Z, you might need to make some adjustments. That's where you start taking models out and start adding models in until you get back to that balanced list. Or you need to make it a skew harder and make it a skew list, so your opponent needs to answer the questions, not you. So this is somewhat of a skew list in that it's super fast. But fast isn't necessarily a skew. Really, defense and armor are the types of skews that we're looking for. Stuff that people have difficult things to do or deal with. Fast can be dealt with play tactics, and that means that any list over there can play against this list if they play it right. So.
So with him, you really want to get up close, but
Denison512 asks, what would you say is a good way to get inspiration for building a list? For example, I've been considering playing Karchev, similar to Butcher 3 lists, were being played a year ago or so, with the caster being a bully on scenario with self-sufficient units.
And he auto hits with so he hits as hard as, you know.
So I've actually played Karchev as a bully before. I played him in War Machine Weekend at 2012 that way. Bullied a lot of people around, camped all of his focus, didn't spend any of it ever. Had a lot of self-sufficient units, had Doom Reavers, Fenris, stuff like that. Towed around the behemoth and just he shot shots and never gave me any focus. He just, you know,
He gets +2 strength and armor.
aimed all the time.
Would boost him if you had storm range to 9 or to 17 POW with weapons.
So inspiration really comes from, you know, what do I want to accomplish? It's going to come from, you know, talking with your friends, talking with people at the game store, seeing other things and saying, I want to build something similar. I'll be honest with you, you're probably never going to build a Karchev list that's going to do what Butcher 3 does. Okay, you might be able to build something similar, you might enjoy it. It may never do anything better than what he does. You're trying to, you're almost trying to build a, you're trying to make a boot do a tennis shoe job, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Sure, it'll fit your foot, but it doesn't necessarily work the same way. So inspiration can come from anywhere. You know, I always, I build lists constantly. I'm always building lists on my phone. I'll look at a particular model that I haven't played in a while or whatever, and I'll say, okay, who's the best caster to build this guy around? I'll start with either a caster or a beast or a unit or a specific solo and say, I want to build a model around or a list around this. I want to build something that does well. So one of my lists I built around Tyrant Redeem. You know, I was like, what can I do to make Tyrant Redeem work? I ended up with a P. Makeda list where I had savagery on him and a Archidon on him, so that I could basically, you know, he would redeem speed 8, savagery makes him +5, so I'd have the Archidon kind of run up the side. Archidon would cast lightning strike on him. He would advance 13. He would jump 5. He would kill a model, and then he would sprint another 13. So in one turn you could basically cover the entire table, and then he would be in their backfield. I played a game against an opponent where Redeem went in, killed a couple of models out on the edge, and then wrapped around behind them and was in their support staff for the rest of the game. They never had enough models to be able to go back and deal with Redeem. Eventually their caster had to do it, had to kill Redeem. So that was a fun list. Was it competitive? Probably not, but it was a lot of fun. and it's something that I gained inspiration because I specifically wanted to abuse Tyrant Redeem. So, that's kind of where you start. Find a model or unit that you really think is worth trying. I mean, you can build a list for almost any of that stuff. You find some of the crappiest models in the game, you can specifically build a list for them that does well. Will it do well in a tournament? Maybe not, but you can certainly play it on League Night, or you can come bring it with your friends and enjoy a good game where you take a list that they've never seen before, or build a list with a suboptimal set of models that do really well in a very particular list. So that's where I gain my inspiration.
Yeah.
Okay. Google's connected.
So Dorksim asks, if you could only play one game a week due to having a 6-month-old baby, what's the one thing you should focus on, either list-wise or game-wise? So find you need to make sure that your playtime is valuable. So in this particular case, let's say I built this list. Let's say you can only play it once a week, okay? Don't change this list. I know it's really tempting to, especially because you only get one game a week and you want to play something new. You want to get really good, you need to play the same list every time, so you're not fighting learning the list each week. Okay, I'm going to bring this list back and say, okay, I still know how to play this list. I'm going to play it well, and I'm going to learn it, and I'm not going to change it. I'm going to stick to it. And then spend your time writing down mistakes that you made, learning how to space, learning the aspects of the game instead of trying to learn models. That's what I see a lot of people doing, is they're always rebuilding or trying new things. They get excited, they see it on the forum, they hear about it on a podcast, they read about it, whatever, and they're like, oh, I want to try that. And so they switch to whatever, and they only play one game a week, and they just never get through that early stage of learning the list, early stage of figuring out what are the best matchups for them. They're never going to get past that part where they've mastered the list, because they're always learning the beginning parts of the list. So really you have to focus your learning and figure out, okay, what exactly do I want to learn here, and how do I focus in on that. So if I were building this list and I were only playing once a week, I would not change it for at least the first month. I'd play 3 to 4 games with it. Then I might make some slight adjustments to see what I need, and I'd spend all my time saying, okay, I need to optimize Jarl so that I know what I'm doing. And I'd spend my time worrying about, okay, I'd take some notes after each match and I would run through it in my head. I might even get a GoPro camera and record it and go back and watch it if I had some spare time. Say, 6-month-old wakes up at 3 in the morning and I need to put her back to bed. She won't go to bed for another 2 hours. I can sit down and just sit and watch myself play for 2 hours and say, oh, well, I screwed up there. I screwed that rule up, or I didn't do this thing right. I mean, there are ways that you can improve your game outside of, you can watch other people's battle reports. You can watch other people's battle reports with the same caster. That's a really good way to do it, because you see how somebody else plays it, how they built their list, how they approach the game. You can find out about good and bad matchups because of what they run into. Those are the sort of things you can do that there's no quick answer to how you get through this. You just have to, it's studying the game. If you want to be good at this game, you need to be a student of the game. I'll be honest, I don't really play more than one game a week usually. I may play 2 games or 3 games a week on some weeks. When I really get into it, I'll play 4 or 5 games a week, but there are a lot of times where I only play 1 game a week. But I spend a lot of time thinking and talking about this game. I spend a lot of time watching other people play this game. I spend a lot of time thinking about how these things are going to work together. And I don't change my list very often. I try to stick to the same list a lot of the times, and I play a lot of games with the same list. So, anyway, those are some ideas.
Right now?
Are they like a 50-plus game?
Okay, so
But yeah, he's definitely.
let's see.
How long do you put it? How ahead of time do you put
Looks like we've been recording for about an hour. Do you have any final questions, James, before we close up? I hope that you learned something here. I hope that it helped you. I appreciate that you donated to a charity to get this, and that's why I took a little bit of extra time to make sure you got some good information out of this. I appreciate it a lot. So I hope that this is valuable to people watching. This is one of those episodes of the Tactical Q&A where I spent an awful lot of time talking and not a lot of time doing stuff on the table. I mean, this is something you could have gotten from a podcast. You didn't necessarily see the visual aspect of it, but I hope the visual aspect, what you saw on the table, helped a little bit, helped maybe you think about a few things. I hope that you guys are able to come up with some new lists, and I hope that you're able to maybe tread some new territory with lists from some of the things you learned here. I think that list building is one of those sometimes intuitive for people and sometimes not things that we have to learn. I certainly took me a long time to learn it. And I've been playing this game for a long time, so built a lot of lists, and a lot of them were awful. Well, looks like there's no other questions, so I think we're going to close down for the evening. We'll do another tactical Q&A next month, so if you have any specific questions, specifically I'd like questions more that deal with stuff on the table, moving model spacing, stuff like that, please send them in.
From PFP. Oh no, that's bullshit. That's the fire.
And we'll see you guys next time.